The auditorium was packed. Thousands of people had come to Britain's Got Talent that night expecting something extraordinary. Nobody expected what was about to happen. A young man walked onto that stage alone. No band. No backup. Just a microphone, a spotlight, and something burning quietly in his chest that the whole world was about to feel. He was tall. Composed. His eyes carried something older than his years, a kind of stillness that made the crowd go quiet before he even opened his mouth. Simon Cowell leaned back in his chair, already unimpressed. He had seen thousands of acts. He had crushed hundreds of dreams. Tonight would be no different. Or so he thought. The boy's name was Barron. And when the host asked him what he was going to sing, he paused for just a moment, a half-second that somehow stretched into eternity, and said quietly, "A song I wrote for my family. I call it Faith, Family, and the House of Light." Simon's eyebrow rose. The other judges exchanged glances. The audience buzzed softly with uncertain curiosity. Who was this kid? What was this song nobody had ever heard? Then the music began. It started with a single piano note. Pure. Hollow. Like a door opening into a room full of memory. Barron closed his eyes, and when his voice came out, when it truly came out, the entire arena seemed to stop breathing. His voice was not perfect. It was something far more powerful than perfect. It was real. It cracked slightly on the first line, just barely, the way a voice cracks when it is carrying something it has held for too long. And in that crack, every single person in that auditorium heard something. A mother heard her child. A father heard his own regret. A young person in the back row heard the exact words they had never been able to say to their own family. The lyrics spoke of candles burning in windows on cold nights. Of hands reaching across long silences. Of faith that does not shout, that only glows, steady and quiet in the dark. Of a house that is not built from walls but from moments. From a look across the dinner table. From a name whispered in prayer. From every time someone chose to stay when walking away would have been easier. Simon Cowell did not move. This was the man who had told artists to go home and give up. This was the man who had sat through 10,000 performances without flinching. But somewhere in the second verse, somewhere between the line about a father's silence and the line about a mother's hands, something shifted in his expression. Something very small. And the cameras caught it. His jaw tightened slightly. His eyes dropped. Just for a second. Then he looked back up at the stage, and something about the way he looked, like a man suddenly reminded of something he thought he had buried, made the entire front row lean forward. By the chorus, 3 of the 4 judges were visibly emotional. One had her hand pressed gently to her chest. Another was shaking her head slowly, not in disbelief, but in that particular kind of awe that has no other gesture. But it was the audience that broke everything open. It started in the 3rd row. A single person rose to their feet. Then another. Then the entire section. Then row by row, like a slow and unstoppable tide, thousands of people stood, not because someone told them to, not because the music commanded them, but because something inside each of them recognized what they were hearing, and they could not remain seated for it. Barron kept singing. Eyes closed. Voice steady now, steadier than before, as if the crowd's belief had given him something to stand on. The final chorus came like a wave that had traveled 1,000 miles just to reach this shore. And then he held the last note. He held it longer than should have been possible. He held it the way you hold on to something you are afraid to let go of. And when it finally ended, when the silence rushed back in, the entire arena erupted. Simon Cowell sat completely still for 3 full seconds. Then he pressed his buzzer. Not the red one. He pressed the golden buzzer. Gold confetti exploded from the ceiling. The crowd screamed. The other judges jumped to their feet. But Barron stood at that microphone with his eyes still closed, just for one more second, as if he was saying a quiet thank you to something no camera could see. When his eyes finally opened, they were wet. And he smiled. Not the smile of someone who had just won something. The smile of someone who had just said something true for the very first time in front of the entire world. Simon walked to the edge of the judges' table. The arena fell quiet enough to hear breathing. And he said, just loud enough for the microphone to catch, I don't know where that came from. But it came from somewhere real. And I think every single person in this room felt it. You don't just have talent, son. You have something that cannot be taught. You have the ability to make people remember what matters. The crowd roared again. And somewhere across the world, someone watching on a small screen in a quiet room pressed their hand over their mouth, because they had needed to hear exactly that. Exactly those words. At exactly this moment. Faith. Family. And the house of light. Some songs do not just entertain. They arrive. Like something the heart has been waiting for. And when they do, nothing is exactly the same afterward.